All right, guys, so moving around to the front, we're going to dismantle the Dana 30. So it's 27 spline. Again, it's got the 410 gears in it, stock axles. Everything in this front end right now is stock. And it's a pretty tough little axle. I mean, you'd be surprised. They've been using the Dana 30 for decades. They still use it. So I already took the hub off. The beautiful thing about this axle is that you don't need too many specialty tools. You're going to need a pair of snap ring pliers, a hub nut socket, a couple of Allens. Of course, you need a hammer. Always need a mallet, dead blow mallet, and a small hammer. But you know, basically, it's pretty simple to take off, which is a good thing. Always love that if you need to do a trail fix. I took the other side apart already, just to find out how dirty and corroded and rusted it was, and it's pretty tough. So bear with me. We're going to take it apart just piece by piece. So it starts with the hub on here. It basically locks in to the splines off the stub shaft or the end of the axle. A couple of small Allen bolts on the end cap. Pull the end cap off, and then your hub's going to be sitting there. That's when you got to reach in and with your snap ring pliers, and the snap ring will be on the end of the axle. It sets in a groove. So you'll reach in there, open it up, pull those out, and then your hub will slide off. Hopefully I can find that Allen bolt I just dropped. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is it's got a large, basically, hub nut. It's a lock nut. There's two of them. So you got a large nut. Takes your hub nut tool, a 1/2 inch drive. But before you take that off, you're going to look in here, and it's got a plate between the two nuts. So you basically put one of the nuts on, you set your preload for the bearings, and then you knock one of the tabs down on this little washer that it's got between it. So it turns out being a little tab. It'll close down over one on the inside, and then you bend one down over the outside so it locks them. To do that, you're going to need a hammer and a screwdriver. You're just going to want to bend those tabs out. Now, these look like they've been reused a couple times. Got them mostly out of the way. We'll see if I can get the hub wrench on, nut wrench on there. And on the other side, man, these things were just like super loose. This one does not so bad, but it could be being held on by the brake caliper. So let's find out. I'm going to take that brake caliper off first. And that's a 1/4 inch Allen. Got one nut on the back, like that. And then you've got a little bracket here that slides off right on the bottom of the caliper. Just needs a little love with a hammer. It's basically like a little, kind of like a keyway. It holds the caliper snug up against the mount and the knuckle. So it looks kind of like this. And this is a spring-loaded tab. So the tab goes in, you slide it in, and it puts pressure on it, and then there's the Allen that comes in from the backside to hold it in place. Taking that off, then your caliper is free to come off. You're probably wondering why I have this piece of baling wire hanging on the frame. Oh yeah, come on, baby. It's basically it has a pad that's mounted to the outside of the caliper, single piston on the inside, and then the other brake pad rides, basically it sets into the knuckle. So, you know, not the best design, but this baling wire, yeah. My baling wire is to hold my brake caliper up against the frame while I'm working on everything else. So now that we have it off, we're gonna give it a shake. Had a little bit of play, but not excessive. And the other side was here. Watch this. All right, so there's like all kinds of stuff you find out when you're taking an old vehicle apart. So we were out driving this around. I took it to my lab. I knew the bearings were a little loose. I'd kind of checked them, but if you look at this, like this thing is like I backed off the first nut, but I have not like backed off the other spindle nut. So that is just craziness. It was basically kind of being held in place by the brake caliper and the brake pad. So Yeah, I'm thinking definitely new bearings, right? Yeah, right? Yeah, that was like super sloppy. So now we're gonna take our hub wrench, knock the outside hub bolts off. Less so on the inside one. The inside one you set for the preload, and then on the bearing, and then the outside just locks it in place. And I like to use one of these little handy, almost like a kind of a dental pick tool to pull this stuff out. And you can see this one has been used quite a bit. You know, it's kind of bent over. I mean, you can flatten them out and then reuse them. And then this little tab here, tab runs on the groove that's in the spindle. A little groove that tab sets in there to keep that washer from spinning, so that when you bend the tabs over, it just locks it in place, keeps your bearings, everything from walking away. Okay, when we put this back together, we'll check specs on preload for the bearings. It makes a difference whether they're new bearings or if they're used bearings. We'll be using new bearings. And I'm noticing somebody had this thing apart because all the studs are fairly new. Once you get to that point, you're going to kind of cup your hand over the outside because you're going to slide this off your bearings. The outer bearing is going to be right here. Tapered roller bearing. And then outside of that tapered roller bearing, it also has a another washer with a tab on it that goes into that spline, little groove on the spline or the spindle. We're just getting new discs. Here we go. So here's our rotor, brake rotor, vented, and your spindle bearings on the inside. That's one. It's got a seal, and yep, look at that, brand new studs on it. So maybe they did that when they did the brakes. So maybe I'm a little weird. I like to clean stuff as I go. It doesn't have to be clean enough to eat off of. Next, you got 6 bolts that basically hold the backing plate on and the brake caliper mount to the knuckle. And those are 9/16. Alright, so if everything's clean in there and not too rusty, your backing plate should slide off. You need a little bit of loving with a screwdriver, but typically if things aren't too bent or crusty, it'll slide right off. Like that. Our backing plate. Now your caliper mount is the same thing. This one's coming off really nice. The other one took a whole bunch of motivation to get it to come off of there. So you can definitely tell this one has been apart. But man, I'll tell you what, whoever took it apart did not pay any attention to like cleaning it when they put it back together. Probably just a hack mechanic. All right, now your spindle is probably might need a little bit of motivation. Just want to make sure you don't damage these 6 mounting bolts at the back here. But some people like to use screwdrivers, but they have a tendency to break the tips off of them. So I like to just put a little steel chisel in there. And there is our spindle. You're also going to notice that inside the spindle you got a very small roller bearing, little needle bearings in there. So I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't look like it has much of a lip on the inside to get a puller out there. I'm not sure if it's a press fit or not, but we'll find out. At this point, you're ready to pull the axle out. Now, first thing I notice is that this outer axle, just a kind of a rubber seal, weather seal. Yeah, it's not in such great shape, huh? And your axle will slide out. So I'm going to show you something here. But this is one of the things I noticed when I was doing the walk around. You remember a couple episodes ago. Hear that? That is the U-joint. So these things are completely shot. The beautiful thing is we're getting new axles. Yeah. From Sierra Gear and Axle, they're going to be providing some new chromoly shafts for us. So pretty excited about that. Edla is going to be a happy camper on the Rubicon in a couple weeks. All right, so you can see, it exposes your whole knuckle. Got your ball joints, top and bottom. Your tie rod connection rod ends there. We're going to reconvene tomorrow morning. So it's getting late. Time to hit the sack. Maybe have a beer. Pacifico. Yeah. All right. Back with you tomorrow morning. All right, we're back in the morning. Probably don't recognize me, huh? I shaved, look at that. Bathed. My wife didn't recognize me. All right, so now it's time to take off the steering linkage. We're going to end up removing the knuckle, which means we got to pull these ball joints off. We're also going to be replacing the steering arms. We've got steering arms, a heavy-duty kit from Rugged Ridge coming in. And you can see we kind of looked at these during the walk around, but yeah, they're just old. They're worn out. They're going to get new ones. It seems like that's the theme here, right? All right, so this is an OTW puller. Got it in a kit on Amazon. We'll put the link down below. But the idea is that you want to put, it's got the legs that run down. They've got upward facing teeth on them, and then the middle of it, or the press, has got a cup on the end which will ride over the all right, the threaded end of your rod end. These are metric, so this is actually a 17. Now, a lot of people like to blow these off with an air ratchet, but oh, look at that, it just fell out. It was not tight. I have a tendency to like to do anything like this by hand, just because got a better feel of what's going on. Don't want to drive into it with an impact wrench and blow something apart. If you're going to beat on it, make sure that you put the nut back on top, thread it all the way down, or better off use a different nut that's got the same threads but doesn't have the crenellation for the cotter pin. We'll try this one, see what it does. That one's a little tighter. You can also get at that point and then hit it, give it a good smack with a hammer on the end. That'll sometimes help knock it off. And there it goes. I didn't give it a lot of pressure. I mean, it was just, a moderate tap. You just want to be cautious with anything steering related, because steering and brakes, those are things that can kill you if they fail. So on every one of your threaded steering components, you are going to have a cotter pin. And why? Well, it's just what I said a minute ago. Steering and brakes, when those things fail, they can cause some serious problems. It's actually down in Baja probably 20 years ago. Had a Centerlink brake on a road south of San Ignacio. Middle of the night, very remote dirt road. Came into a kind of a G out. When I got up to the top, I was like, nothing on the steering wheel. That was pretty scary. I made a big mistake though, and I should have tried to let it coast out before I hit my brakes, because as soon as I hit my brakes, it wanted to pull to the right and it sent us off the road. And what do you say in Baja when that happens? No bueno. Oh yeah, gosh darn it, look at this. Dude is just loose. Okay, so the nut is a little bit rusty on the end of the rod end. The tapered end is just spinning in the knuckle. So I'm gonna grab a pickle fork. See what happens. Oh, it's still turning for sure. Now we're gonna resort to a little impact, see if that helps. Nothing. Might have to try thermal technology. Normally you'd be trying to heat up the knuckle to loosen it up from the tapered end of the rod end. But right now I'm just trying to heat up this bolt, maybe get something happening, maybe expand it a little bit. Come on, baby. And there it goes. So that was just enough. All right, now we're going to move on into the Pitman arm. Hope this one, look at that. And then that came right off, okay. That's good news. We're going to use the puller on this one. I'm liking this little OTC kit that I've got. It's got a special tool here. You can see that. Specifically designed for a Pitman arm. Slides over the end. Yeah, because there's not a lot of room up here actually. We're going to move to a ratcheting box and wrench. I like the idea of this better than hammering on your pitman arm. Especially the... Whoa, there it goes. Yep. I should have tied it up first, huh? So that OTC kit works pretty good. I want to take a minute to look at the two shafts. So we've got the old one. I mean, it worked for years. You can see it's kind of bent though. It served its purpose well. And boy, I tell you what, if this is the same steering arm that went through the Darien and multiple trips to the Rubicon, pretty darn impressed. So the one in the foreground, that is the new system. And that guy is a heavy duty unit from Rugged Ridge. We've spun off the rod ends back. We're going to measure them very carefully or against the original, even though it was bent a little bit before we put them back on, just to be as close as possible on alignment before we get going. Pretty exciting. Good stuff. And this is, I'm going to apologize, I've said OTC, OD2W, I don't know what I said. This is Orion, an Orion kit. So I have a couple of these. They're fairly new. They got good reviews on Amazon, and so far they're working very well for what I need. I mean, this is not a full-time professional shop. It's just a big fat man cave. All right, now to remove the knuckle, you got to take the cotter pin off of the upper ball joint nut and keeper nut, and there isn't one on the bottom of the ball joint. But this thing is super crusty, as is everything, and it is 1 3/16" nut. So we'll see if this thing wants to move at all. Running this on a 3/4, it's going to spin the knuckle here. So we'll roll the knuckle back. Well, maybe not. No, it won't. Actually. Ugh. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and heat it up like I did the other one. See if we can't expand that nut just a little bit. All right, we're back to the fire. So it should be getting pretty darn hot about now. Just make sure you're working with a fire extinguisher handy. I got one sitting about 3 feet away. It's still nice and hot. Hopefully we can give a little love. Look at that. Beauty. She's on fire. Make sure you don't put your fingers on that for a while, or your tongue. Notice when I came back in, I made sure that you got gloves on when you work on something like this. All you got to do is like touch that with the back of your knuckle. You're going to have a blister. Gonna let that cool for a bit, and now I'm going to tackle the one on the bottom. All right, so the bottom is 1 1/8. And we give that a little love with a little love. That means bang on it. Yep, broke loose. Yep, looks like it's moving. That's a good sign. All right, now that we got the ball joint nuts off, I want you to pay really close attention, because the next step you're going to need to approach with the delicate hand of a cardio surgeon. All right? Be careful not to hit your studs. But if you notice, I put a little piece of baling wire through the knuckle to the end of the axle, so when it does pop off, I'm not going to go too far. Maybe I need a bigger hammer. All right, so it happened to pop out of there when I didn't have the camera going. So that's the way it is. You can get all the violence when I do the other side. So bottom line is, you give it some good wax. Also start hitting it right on the side of where the taper connection is, where that mates up right there, and that'll often loosen them up. Or you could resort to hitting it with a torch, trying to heat up the outside of it, because that'll expand it and loosen up that joint a little bit. So we're going to move around to the other side. And just like that. So there we are. Got them both off. So you saw me fiddling around there. I was looking to put the jack stands under the axle to support it. But on the passenger side, we got the diff here. My jack stands, or the hoist jacks, won't slip up between the end of the axle and the differential So I'm just going to put a ratchet strap on it. U-bolts are loose. We're going to work around on the other side. I want you guys to look at this. This is a beautiful thing. So I don't know if they had set these vehicles up with Rancho suspension, so it had the old traditional, probably a 2-inch Rancho lift. And their shocks, it's pretty typical for the day. But the stone has been on here a long time. It's probably been on here since Trip to the Tip, which was the 1998 trip that we did back to South America with these vehicles, 3 of them. And yeah, it's still got some compression and rebound. I'm actually really impressed with that. All right. So spring plate, remember, you can see this thing was set up with dual shock pins, but only one mount up here on the frame. And actually we can see that this shock mount has some, had been cracked. Look, somebody welded it after the fact. So definitely a stress place. Looks like the weld's holding up. I might clean that up and run a bead across it though. All right, so Marlin spike, and this thing is just a booger. Yep, it's going. Oh, look at that, amazing, huh? Now when it pops out, spring will hang on the screwdriver, so it's not gonna flop. There it goes. Give that just a little motivation. All right, here we go. Finally getting this spring off. Ah, look at that beauty. So you can see that this bolt is just rusty and super pitted. Yeah, I mean, it's actually working into a little bit of depth on the surface of the bolt. So it was just, even though the springs are constantly moving, it was just like almost welded itself on. It's gonna be interesting to see what the inside of the spring bushings look like. But man, that was a job. Yep, oh, there we go. Look at that. So at this point now I'm going to move the this jack stand, or the hoist jack, underneath the axle. And then we're going to raise the Jeep up, bring the engine hoist over and grab that axle. Still want to be kind of gentle with it because now it's just sitting on the hoist jacks. So I haven't found anything much better than a good old sandblaster to take all of the baked on grime and dirt, dust, grease that builds up over the years on undercarriage parts. Picked up a sandblaster from Harbor Freight. They're about 90 bucks. It's the 20-pound model. Yeah, I set it up yesterday and it works pretty good. I don't have a dedicated bay, so I'm just out in front of the shop and I'll sweep this stuff up later.
I can tell you that I'm glad that I am a journalist and like to work on Jeeps for a living rather than be a sandblaster. So that's a dirty job. Mike Rowe, he's done some dirty jobs, but he should try sandblasting. Next week, we're going to be taking the AMC 20 and the Dana 30 down to Ring Pinion Services and give them an entire makeover. So hope you can join us. I'll see you next time.